Tel Aviv University, when you look at something like that, and granted, in the past and in the history of between Israel and the United States, you know, in war times, if we're looking back at the Yom Kippur War in the early 70s, there were things that the two countries did not agree upon. But this is as bad as it gets, many analysts would say. How can this project on the future of the relationship between the two countries?
Well, I think that there's two separate issues here. Right? We're used to, when we look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it seems like the Israelis, the Americans, and the Palestinians each have their own rule, their own roles. Sorry, they have their modus operandi of how things happen, and we kind of know how things are going to work. In terms of the Iranian issue, it's a totally different story. The history is totally different. Much of the American involvement in Iran historically had nothing to do with Israel, right? So the Iranian nuclear program started at the time of Eisenhower, who actually lent a hand to the Iranian Shah. Okay, you know what happened during the times of President Carter. You know, the refugee, the hostage crisis. You know, second President Bush, who tried to stop the Iranian nuclear program. There was only a few dozen centrifuges, and he was unable to do that. Even 2 years ago, you know, there were different. So in that sense, it's a totally different ball game when it comes to the Iranian issue. And I think the different parties are, and with a changing Middle East, the different parties are trying to figure out their roles, and the roles are it's a process that's going to take some time. Okay, so I had two important things to say. One thing about the destructive component. Okay, it was mentioned here about the IPAC. Okay, the fact that the profile of IPAC is going to be damaged as a result of this visit has major consequences for the ability of Israel to get what it wants in Washington, D.C.
When it comes to the lobby, the Israeli lobby overseas. Yeah.
Beyond that, what we've seen in the past few months, and especially 2 or 3 days ago, is the lawfare that is being waged between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Lawfare, I mean the fact that the conflict is being channeled through all sorts of judicial institutions abroad, whether those are international institutions, the ICC, or American courts. And the fact that, a matter of fact is that Israel needs the United States in this arena, in the international arena. And the next 2 years, when President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu, probably Prime Minister Netanyahu is likely to be reelected, will have to work together. They will have to join hands during those 2 years for the protection of Israel, for the benefit of our own country.
And Mark Zell, finally, last question to you. Exactly that point, because the president.
Still here.
I know the president. When you're not physically in the studio, it's very hard for me. But I'm glad to have you on the phone. That said, you know, exactly that. For the next 2 years, Obama is still the president. A move is such that, you know, what everybody's referring to as the ticking bomb, that is that speech, not necessarily Iran right now. Doesn't that actually bode bad for Israel? And does the Republican Party, you know, constituency overseas understand that? Because he is also being used as a bipartisan.
Well, first of all, I think I'm hearing a lot of panic talk here among the people in your studio, and I think there's a lot of them are simply wrong. Let me just address the comment that the professor made about AIPAC. I mean, this administration basically created J Street, which is an alternative to AIPAC, and they did so back.
Okay, so just apart from the remark about the history of J Street, which is quite inaccurate, the fact of the matter is that traditionally the White House sends high-level officials, and today, after the event with the speech, the White House is threatening not to send even a cabinet-level official. So the fact of the matter is that there seems to be at least some effect on
But again, and I think bipartisan, in a bipartisan way, we probably can argue this for hours. But that said, Professor Sommer, thank you for being with us. Tal Shalev, always a pleasure. And of course, Mark Zell on the phone, and Rebecca Shimoni-Stoyle in Washington as we move along.